the amendment violates House Rule 16, Clause 7. Now, you can disagree with me, but you're not the chairman anymore. I'm sitting in the chair now.
Reclaiming my time.
Wow. I mean, somebody had to say it. You just watched Jerry Nadler, the former chairman, totally interrupt the proceedings to lecture the current chair, accuse him of being scared, and basically throw a fit because he lost the gavel. And what does Johnson do? He just sits there. He listens patiently, and then he very calmly, very clearly, and very correctly reminds him how things work. This isn't a personal insult, guys. This is a simple statement of fact. This is the kind of procedural battle that really shows you who's there to follow the rules, and who's there to just make the scene for the cameras. We're about to watch the full context of this exchange, and I want you to pay close attention to who is trying to maintain order and who is trying to create chaos. If you're tired of the political grandstanding and you want to see more breakdowns of what actually happens in these committees, do me a favor. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps. All right, let's watch the whole thing.
Mr. Chairman, there are 13 ayes and 9 noes.
The motion to table
Mr. Chairman,
passes. Yes, who seeks recognition?
I seek to strike the last, move to strike the last word.
The ranking member is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, in this last amendment by Ms. Scanlon that was just ruled out of order, you ruled it out of order because it references a specific date. In my parliamentary universe, adding a specific date is considered a limiting amendment. It limits the scope of the underlying amendment. It does not expand it. Therefore, it cannot be a grounds for holding an amendment out of order because it limits it, it doesn't expand it. It's called in parliamentary terms a limiting amendment, which is always permitted. So this is just another example of the Republicans using obviously specious reasoning because you're afraid to vote on anything to do with January 6th. You're afraid to vote on all the things we've talked about before because your constituents might hold you responsible. So I would ask you why this is not a limiting amendment. Why this, in what way this expands the scope of the amendment, and I'll yield to you for the purpose.
I'll be happy to answer. We will belabor the point further. I've already explained this, that by presenting this amendment, it changes the purpose of the bill and makes it about January 6th. On its face, by your explanations, by all the comments that have been made, you want this to be about January 6th. You just said it again. You emphasize the same point. That's not what the underlying legislation is about.
Reclaiming my time.
You asked me to respond, and I'm giving you the response. Okay, so
responded.
on its face, the amendment violates House Rule 16, Clause 7. Now, you can disagree with me, but you're not the chairman anymore. I'm sitting in the chair now.
Reclaiming my time. I certainly do disagree with you. And again, I repeat that the motives of the Republicans today are shameful as seeking only to avoid voting on all these different subjects that have been raised today.
Gentleman yields back. The chair is going to respond to the outrageous claim that there's hypocrisy going on here. All the clutching of pearls is so far out of order, and I'm going to clarify the record here for anyone who's watching at home, high school students who are studying civics, and some on this committee who should understand the rules. The rule is, again, let me state very simply what the rule is. House Rule 16, Clause 7 says that an amendment cannot introduce material beyond the scope and purpose of the bill before us. Let me tell you why the last amendment, by way of example, was ruled out of order. I've already explained this again, but I'll give you further detail. Ms. Scanlon's amendment says on page 2, strike all that follows in the underlying bill after the resolving clause and insert the following, that Congress acknowledges the United States Capitol attack on January 6, 2021. The underlying bill says something very different. It says, be it resolved that Congress recognizes and appreciates the dedication and devotion demonstrated by the men and women of local law enforcement who keep our communities safe, and 2, condemns calls to defund, disband, and dismantle or abolish the police. The reason, everybody watching at home, The reason that they're so anxious to change the language of the underlying legislation is because of the last sentence that I just read you, that last clause, because this resolution condemns calls to defund, disband, dismantle, or abolish the police. They're all on record, including the ranking member who just clutched his pearls and told me that I was out of order here.
Would the gentleman
He is
yield?
on record saying that he wanted to defund the police. I'm not going to yield. You guys have talked enough. And you've all accused us of abusing the rules. This amendment, just like the ones before it, is a blatant violation of House Rule 16, Clause 7. It is not germane because it wants to talk about January 6th, and it wants to get rid of the condemnation of the call to defund police, which was their mantra here until just recently.
Would the gentleman
Because now
yield?
we've seen the
Mr.
results.
Chairman, will you yield
The
to a
chair does
question?
not yield. I will yield if you have an amendment. No, I'm not going to yield to a question. No. You've talked enough, Mr. Cicilline.
You don't get to decide that, Mr. Chairman. You don't get to decide who talked
It's my
enough.
time, and I'm not yielding.
Okay, then I ask.
I just want to tell you, the hypocrisy here, we've been in contact with a former parliamentarian of the House who's been watching these proceedings on TV, and he says every single amendment was in order because striking a clause in the preamble is per se germane, neither adds nor subtracts, and police, by definition, means all police, and that includes the January 6th police, it includes anything else. So I just want to tell you that's just another confirmation of your hypocrisy.
The amendment does not satisfy the subject matter and fundamental purpose test. Before you balk, wait, let me explain. Because you cut out the second resolution clause, the important sentence about defunding police that the sponsor of the legislation just said was central to his, this is not a whereas clause, it's the resolution. You're changing the scope of the legislation by striking that out.
Mr. Chairman, you can always limit the scope of a bill by an amendment. You can always limit it. That doesn't go to its...
It changes the
doesn't-
purpose of the gentleman's
There's
bill.
no
as he
such
just
thing
said.
that says you can't change the purpose.
That's a
There's
matter
no
of
such
opinion
thing.
and should be voted on.
You don't get to decide what the purpose of the underlying resolution is and whether it's
sir. No,
changed.
sir.
Mr. Chairman, since when do we have argument while the chair is making a ruling?
I'm
The
in
chair started being so absurd.
oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Wait a minute, Mr. Ranking Member. I sat under lots of absurd decisions from you. All right. Let me read you Section 7 under House Rule 16. It's Clause 7, fundamental purpose. Another test used by the chair in determining germaneness is one in which the fundamental purpose of the bill is compared with the fundamental purpose of the amendment. See Manual Section 933. If the purpose or objective of an amendment is unrelated to that of the bill in which it is offered, the amendment may be... Let me finish. That's 8 Canon, Section 2911. The test is particularly applicable to an amendment in the nature of substitute. Okay. If the purpose... Well, it gives lots of examples. All right, let me say this. The parliamentarian who's watching on television, who is, I'm sure, a Democrat parliamentarian or would not have had Mr. Nadler's cell number, let me tell you that this does, in the view of this chair and this parliamentarian, expand or change the purpose of the bill before us. And so our interpretation of House Rule 16, Clause 7, is that it is not germane. Now, the other side is going to disagree, but that's the beauty of our system. The majority party is in the chair, makes decisions, it's appealable, it's subject to table. We've gone through that process here. This is the way this works, and always has. And there are thousands of examples of this and precedent that has been set in the Judiciary Committee and its storied history. So,
Mr. Chairman,
you're not recognized. So for all of the drama here, that is the ruling of the chair, and I yield back.
I appeal the ruling of the chair.
The ruling is appealed. Does the gentleman seek to table? Motion to table. The appeal is made, and the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Jordan?
Okay, so now you've seen the full lead up. Let's really get into this, because the context is everything. First, you see Jerry Nadler get recognized to speak. And does he make a calm procedural argument? No. He immediately goes on the attack. He calls the chair's ruling specious reasoning. That's a fancy way of saying it's fake or a lie. And then here's the kicker. He says the Republicans are afraid to vote on anything related to January 6th. Now look, you and I know that's just a political talking point, but in a formal committee hearing you can't just accuse the chair of being a coward. That's not a procedural objection. That's a personal attack on the chair's motives. And Jerry Nadler, having been the chairman of this exact committee, knows that better than anyone. He is deliberately trying to provoke a reaction. And look at Mike Johnson. He's just sitting there calmly, letting Nadler go on his rant. He's showing a ton of patience, way more than I would have, honestly. Then Johnson gets a chance to respond. And what does he do? He explains exactly why the amendment was ruled out of order. He says, and this is the key word, germane. The amendment wasn't germane. For people who don't follow this stuff 24/7, germane just means it has to be on topic. The original bill, as Johnson explains, was about two things. One, honoring local law enforcement, and two, condemning the defund the police movement. The amendment they were trying to force through was about January 6th. It's a completely different subject. It changed the entire, fundamental purpose of the bill. Johnson, as the chair, was 100% correct to rule it out of order. He was literally just doing his job and following the House rules. So, Nadler knows his amendment was out of order. He knows he just attacked the chair's motives, and still he tries to argue back and lecture the chair after the ruling has already been explained. And that's when Johnson finally, and rightfully, puts a stop to it. He says, "You can disagree with me, but you're not the chairman anymore. I'm sitting in the chair now." That line was perfect. It was firm, it was factual, and it was the only way to get the committee back on track. He wasn't being a bully, he was being a chairman. He was re-establishing that the rules matter. He was basically saying, "Mr. Nadler, I have the gavel. You know how this works. The show is over." This whole clip just proves what we've been seeing for a while. One side is trying to legislate and follow procedure, and the other side just wants to create chaos and get sound bites for the media. Johnson was the adult in the room here. He was patient, he was firm, and most importantly, he was right on the rules. That's just my take. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments.